All right, welcome back, everybody. So, as I continue my quest to try to help people educate themselves so that they can better sniff out financial BS online, we're going to go ahead and dive back into TikTok and specifically discuss some IUL sales agents out there and hopefully help better educate you on learning how some of the things they're talking about actually work and to also give you some more red flags to look out for. So, without further ado, let's dive right back in. So first up in the chute is Ken here. So I've gone through a few of his videos, and he's obviously a life insurance agent. He says it right there on his profile. But he put some stuff out there that is pretty misleading, especially when he starts breaking down the numbers. And especially when he starts talking about things such as the 401k versus his index universal life policy, trying to sell you on why it's better. All right, so first up, we got this video here where he's talking about IUL versus maxing a 401k. So let's hear what he has to say.
Let me show you what it would look like if you got an IUL instead of maxing out your 401k. So here's an example of a 35-year-old male putting in the...
Okay, so a few things to keep in mind from how he's starting here. I kind of want to go back. So 35 years old. Okay, standard non-tobacco. So, I mean, that's good. He's not trying to show the best rate right off the bat. I'll give him props for that. State of Texas. So we'll see if it comes up if state income tax is a thing. But Texas does not have a state income tax, so keep that in mind.
Male putting in the annual max $20,500 into an index.
Oh, come on, man. It's basic facts. Get the basic facts right. I need something heavy. I don't know if this is an old video. I mean, you could see up here, it was posted January 31st of this year. So there's no excuse for this. If you understand how retirement planning and the finance world works, you should know the correct contribution limits. Bottom line is the contribution limits for you as the participant in 2023 is not $20,500, it's $22,500. The $20,500 was 2022's limits. So he's already kind of out of date, which I think shows his level of knowledge of these broader financial planning concepts outside of just insurance.
Index universal life insurance policy. He'll immediately get a life insurance coverage of $983,000.
Okay, that's absolute garbage life insurance coverage for that much money that you're paying. You can get term life insurance for so much cheaper than that if you are needing the life insurance protection. I know they're going to say, oh, that's not the reason for these. You don't use the life insurance for life insurance, death benefits. It's just, once again, way too much complexity for no real added benefit.
At age 45, he'll have $259,000.
Okay, that's
in his cash value.
All right, let me go back. Let me let him kind of go through his spiel here. I'm blowing him up too quick right off the bat. Let's go back to here and let him see what he has to say for a minute.
55, he'll have $259,000 in his cash value. At age 55, he'll have $730,000 in his cash value. And at age 65, he'll have $1.596 million in his cash value. Now
Okay, we'll go through the numbers in a minute, but that is not that great. And also, he's doing the tactic you see a lot of them do, which is they blow through these numbers so quickly that you don't have time to think about, oh, does it make sense? He's rolling through it. You're not seeing the weighted average interest rate there, which is basically the return assumption that they're making is 5.9%. That's not great.
He can pull out this 1.5 however he likes. But if he chooses, he can take a guaranteed income stream of $105,000 every year guaranteed.
Isn't he talking about the non-guaranteed column? Isn't that what he's referring to? Yet he's calling it... Okay, we'll let him finish. I don't know the specifics of the contract he's talking about.
That's completely tax-free by the insurance company for life. The insurance company would guarantee a total payout of $5.7 million.
Whoa. You gotta be freaking kidding me. He's gonna blow right through this. But look, right here on the screen, income benefit. Basically saying you're guaranteed to get $105,000 a year. Look how these income benefits are racking up. They're like, oh, you're going to get 5.7, let's call it 5.8. Let's round up. 5.8 million of guaranteed income. The way you get that, and it's right in the next column there, is through taking a loan against the cash value. Now look on the right side here. Look at the loan amount that you've taken out. By the end of that plan illustration he's showing you, $25 million in outstanding loans against the policy. Look, I don't know the specifics. He's not going to show you specifics here, but I am calling absolute BS that this type of policy stays in force and does not implode decades prior to this point here. There's no way this thing can stay in one piece and have $25 million of outstanding loans you don't have to repay. It's absolute nonsense.
Original 1.5 million. Now here's the best part. Your interest rate that you're getting in the IUL is tied to a market index, but it's not actually in the stock market, which means when the market is doing well, your index will perform and you'll get high rates of return, but you'll never lose. So you're never going to be worried about a stock market crash.
All right. Yeah, okay. Let's let him finish. Jesus, this is heating me up.
For those that have money in a 401k, their biggest concern is what if they lose a big chunk of that money in a big market crash? That happened in 2008, it happened in 2001, and there's a looming recession about to happen in the next 1 or 2 years.
Ooh.
You never have to worry about that.
Or look, he's really piling on the fear here. I mean, he's going like, ooh, look out for market losses in your 401k. The other thing he's not mentioning at all in here, which is really kind of pissing me off, is he's not mentioning a 401k is just an account type. That's all it is. You can have different types of investments based on your own tolerances or goals within the 401k. It's not this monolith like this IUL strategy he's talking about that will only get you this type of return if you choose it, which we'll get into the mechanics of how that works in a second. You have choices on how you're invested within the 401k. You don't have very many choices within these IULs outside of the few indexes that you can go on. And another thing here, he keeps talking about, oh, it's not actually invested in the market. It's tied to an index. That's called a derivative. It's just options. So yeah, you're not actually invested in the market, but that's not necessarily a good thing. And the point where they always say this, they talk about zero risk of market loss, but they don't talk about even in those 0 years, you're going to have fees and costs within these IUL policies that even if you hit that floor, if let's say the market is down, the S&P 500 is down 10% for the year, and you have a 0 rate of return in these IULs, you are going to lose maybe 1% or more in fees. So there is no risk of loss.
Inside of an IUL. Plus, you don't have to wait until you're 59 and a half to touch your money. You can access your money as soon as your first year.
Really misleading on that one too. I mean, a lot of these things have very long drawn out surrender charges. Maybe if you drop in a huge amount up front, if you're going to do that to some of these policies, and you're able to get it your cash value, but you're not able to get it the whole thing for sometimes like 5 to 10 years without paying some sort of surrender charge. And the way he's talking about getting at your money a lot is, like I said before, it's a loan.
So if you want to look into an IUL for yourself, DM me for more information.
Yeah, please don't DM this guy. We'll see if we have time to go through a few more of his videos. But I mean, the whole ambiance here, just look like he's wearing the suit to try to look flashy and smart. And then look, even the books in the background are fake. Like everything about this is just slickster nonsense, pitched by somebody that I think maybe thinks he has your best interest at heart. But honestly, I don't think he knows what he's talking about here. I mean, just go from like the little details in the video. Getting the maximum annual participant contribution for 2023 wrong by $2,000. I mean, those little things add up, and it, I think, is an indicator that they don't really know much outside of their life insurance. But let's dive back in here into that policy, kind of go through some of his numbers, and I'll try to show you if you actually invested in a 401k, how it works in reality versus this kind of made up way. The other thing he didn't talk about here is he didn't mention an employer match at all, which is one of the nice benefits of a 401k. So let's slowly go through this a little bit. So like I said, first things first there, that whole $20,500 a year, putting it in these IULs is pretty substantial. If you've got that much money and you're doing it instead of your 401k, I mean, every person's situation is different, but there are some general rules of thumb. It's likely going to be better to put money in your 401k, especially if there is a match. And I mean, he does mention that here in his comments. Should you be putting it up into the match? He's like, yeah, you should get the match, but he also kind of like poo-poos. I feel like the stuff here in his descriptor is basically forced upon him by compliance in his firm. And like, he doesn't mention any of this stuff inside the video, which I think is telling. He puts it over in the text to try to cover his butt, but have it be a little bit hidden so you're not noticing. So to get back to the numbers though, he's just talking about an employee contribution that you'd be making, and he doesn't mention a thing about an employer match.
Into an index universal life insurance policy, he'll immediately get a life insurance coverage of $983,000 at age.
So on the illustration here, he's saying in 10 years, you're putting $20,500 a year. That's the premium you're putting in. By the time you're 45, you will have put, what does that say there?
45?
205, yeah. So on the illustration it says 205,000 in total premiums by year 10. And the cash that you have accumulated value, $259. You've put in almost $230,000 and it's worth $259,000. That shows you how much the cost of insurance, the front-loaded fees are in this thing. That's a god-awful investment right there, especially for somebody who's in their mid-30s, and they should be probably a little more aggressive at this point, trying to be chasing those slightly higher returns, investing in stocks, investing in an S&P 500 index fund, or even at this point, I'd even say an actively managed fund that's hopefully getting, even if it's below the S&P 500, hopefully doing better than this thing. I mean, this thing is eating up your cash.
In his cash value. At age 55, he'll have $730,000.
All right. So again, so he's walking through the numbers here. So he's walking through the numbers and he's quickly walking through them. So he's saying after 30 years of saving $20,500 a year, which is really the most important thing in this for building wealth, is that you're saving that much money a year, that you have built up almost $1.6 million. Now let's take a look and see why that's maybe not as great as he's trying to make it sound. One other thing before we get away from this that I want to kind of show you here is look at the bottom here. You've got all the types of kind of disclaimer language on these illustrations. Benefits and values are not guaranteed, this, blah, blah, blah. There's a charge for cost of insurance. There's this. And a lot of times those aren't really illustrated on these illustrations well, or they're kind of hidden. Like there's fee, monthly percent of accumulated value. There's no guarantee that these continue unchanged for the years. Like it's unlikely, they say, that would happen in this language down here. The other thing here, right at the top, see, I'll try to stop on it. So it's kind of blurry, but you can see current illustrated values. Okay, illustrated loan rate, 4.6%. So all those loans that he is showing that you're taking later on in this policy, they're assuming 4.6 interest rate on those loans. That can change. The insurance company can change that basically on a whim. They can also change the caps and the participation rates that kind of underlying these IULs on a whim as well, depending on how markets are. So there's a lot of moving parts in this thing that they don't really show you up front. That really kind of, as you get to understand how it works a little better, really helps determine that these things are maybe not that great. All right, so I'm using a pretty super sophisticated tool here. Excel to the rescue yet again. So I've broken down basically three kind of scenarios here to show you how the IUL compares to a 401k. Both a 401k kind of closer matching to his example, and then a 401k with a match that more closely resembles an actual real world scenario and use of a 401k. So with his IUL example, I kept the same numbers. $20,500 annual contribution, no monthly contributions, because that actually makes a difference. If you are contributing monthly as opposed to once annually, that could actually potentially boost your total investment return. Now, I am giving him the benefit of the doubt here. I'm not trying to stack the deck in one way or the other to show how the 401k is much better. The net of fee annual return that he had listed in his illustration went from 5.39% up to 5.9%. And I'm assuming he got that from some sort of backward-looking projection off of some of these maybe S&P 500 index caps or participation rates in these IULs. So I'm just going to go with his figures. And that once again kind of gives us the almost $1.6 million that cash value would be worth in the IUL. But I'm not putting anything here in the 360 months of savings because he didn't take the trouble to do it, so I'm not going to. The 401k without a match is the second scenario here. So basically it's saying you're the only one as the employee who is putting money into the 401k. So we keep the same $20,500. I did break it down monthly by dividing it by 12, and you would get that just over $1,700 monthly contribution to the 401k, which is how most people actually save into their 401k. They put it monthly as basically an auto recurring contribution, and that actually does have an effect, and you'll see in a second. Now, I am using an 8% net of fee annual return, which is somewhat conservative. Because one thing you need to understand about the returns you're getting on these IULs is they're kneecapping you in another way because they're not including dividends. If you include the dividend return, not just the index number return, you get 1 to 2% higher annual returns. So with fees and all that, I've basically gone ahead and been really conservative in saying you're getting over 2% of annual fees that you're paying if you're choosing to invest in an S&P 500 index to try to keep things apples to apples. So I'm giving us, in that sense, a pretty conservative 8% net of fee annual return in the 401k. Now you can see here, after 30 years annually or 360 monthly payments, you can see the two numbers here. So that 2.3 million and 2.5 million is obviously substantially higher than the IUL. That's because there's a higher assumed rate of return, but that's because the problem with the IUL is that while it limits your downside, it severely limits your upside. And that is really where you can get hurt. Because yeah, it's nice to not have losses, but it's also really nice to not miss those giant gains, like the 20% plus years. If you're locked into an IUL getting, 6, 7, 8%, I'm being generous there, that's as much as you're going to get. So you're going to miss out on massive returns over time. So that's what that is all there to factor in. And that's why we're going with a higher return potential with a 401k. And then here's the more realistic scenario. So it's the same $20,500 employee contribution, but you got a 3% match. So a 3% match, the assumption I'm making is that it's on a $100,000 annual salary. Now, I think that is a pretty valid assumption to make, because if you're able to put basically 20% of your income into savings, you're probably making at least $100,000. So that's the assumption I went with. So 3% of 100,000 is 3,000. So that's where we get the annual contribution there of 23,500. Now you can see the breakdown there for the monthly, same annual net of fee return, and that gets us 2.6 for the annual, and then almost 3 million for the monthly. So you can go ahead and be the judge. Do you think it makes sense to put money in an IUL or to put it in your 401k? Because that delta there, yes, you can have your own personal goals and values, which is the main thing that your financial plan and your retirement planning needs to align to. But I mean, people's risk aversion or the reasons people might like an IUL or they get sold it, I have a hard time seeing that delta between 1.5 million from the IUL and the best case scenario here that I've listed, which is really the most realistic, is almost 3 million. That's a pretty large gap that you're having to try to fill. But you can make the judgment on your own.